Hollywood's golden age looked glamorous. Red carpets, flash bulbs, perfect smiles under perfect lights. But behind the spotlights were rule books, strange, strict, and often humiliating. Every star had to follow them or risk losing everything. Studios controlled their faces, their diets, even their private lives. Fame wasn't freedom. It was a contract written in ink and enforced with threats. The moguls who ran MGM, Paramount, and Warner Brothers didn't just make movies. They made people. They decided how stars should look, who they could love, and what they could say in public. Some rules were ruthless. Others were just bizarre, like banning pockets in dresses or forcing stars to get married for publicity. A few were so strange they sound like fiction, but they weren't. They were real, and they were mandatory. Stars like Joan Crawford, Clark Gable, and Judy Garland lived under these rules every single day. Break them, and the studio could destroy your career with a single phone call. Obey them, and you might become immortal on screen, even if you disappear behind a role. This was the price of stardom. Not just talent, not just luck. Obedience, control, perfection on demand. These are the 16 weirdest rules all old Hollywood stars were forced to follow. The side of fame they never showed on film. No pockets allowed. Hollywood glamour came with strange instructions. One of the oddest? No pockets. Costume designers at MGM and Paramount created gowns for female stars without a single pocket. Not for style, for control. Studios believed women with pockets could hide things. Notes, food, money, even love letters. Worse, pockets might ruin the perfect silhouette. A bulge in satin? Unacceptable. Glamour meant looking decorative, not functional. Jean Harlow's dresses were famously pocketless. So were Joan Crawford's early costumes. Designers like Adrian and Ori Kelly followed the rule without question. The result? Actresses had nowhere to put their hands, let alone their belongings. They had to carry tiny purses or rely on assistants for everything. It wasn't about fashion. It was about dependence. This rule also reinforced something darker. The idea that a lady doesn't carry things. That women should be ornamental, not practical. Hollywood turned that notion into studio policy. Stars weren't just actors. They were living sculptures. Beautiful, helpless, controlled. The no-pocket rule lasted decades. Even when pants became acceptable for women off-screen, pockets stayed rare in costumes. Studios wanted every inch of fabric to serve the image, not the person wearing it. Comfort didn't matter. Function didn't matter. Only the silhouette did. Glamour was an illusion, rehearsed down to the pocket seams. Never sit in public during promotions. Grace Kelly stood for hours. So did Lana Turner. Not by choice, by order. During premieres and publicity tours, female stars were told never to sit in public spaces. The reason? Wrinkles. One crease in a gown could ruin a photograph, and photographs were currency. A single bad angle could cost the studio thousands in publicity value. Publicists handed out instructions before every event. Stand, smile, don't lean, don't sit. Studio press handbooks treated posture like a science. Stars practiced holding poses that looked effortless but required rigid muscle control. Behind the elegance was exhaustion. Behind the smiles were aching feet and trembling legs. This wasn't about protecting the dress. It was about protecting the illusion. Hollywood sold perfection. A wrinkled gown suggested humanity, and humanity didn't sell tickets. So stars became statues. They learned to stand in heels for hours without flinching. They learned to ignore discomfort and smile through pain. It was part of the job. Some stars rebelled quietly. They'd lean against walls when photographers weren't looking. Others obeyed completely, terrified of being labeled difficult. The rule applied mostly to women. Male stars could sit. They could lounge. Their comfort mattered more than their gowns. Glamour, even when your feet hurt. Perfect teeth or no career. Close-ups changed everything. Early film technology magnified every flaw. A crooked tooth became a canyon. A gap became a scandal. So studios sent actors to dental specialists with one mission: create perfect smiles. Some stars had teeth filed down for symmetry. Others had them capped, pulled, or replaced entirely. Clark Gable lost most of his teeth to gum disease before his career took off. He wore dentures for every role. Judy Garland was given caps as a teenager for what MGM called camera balance. Her natural teeth weren't bad. They just weren't perfect. And perfect was the only option. The smile sold the fantasy. Studios knew this. They invested in dental work the way they invested in lighting equipment. Both served the same purpose, making stars look flawless. Dentists who worked with Hollywood became specialists in cosmetic symmetry. They didn't just fix teeth, they designed them. Each smile had to match the star's image. Gable's grin had to look rugged but charming. Garland's had to look innocent. Stars had no choice. Sign the contract, fix your teeth, or go home. Some procedures were painful, some were permanent. But the camera didn't care about pain. It only cared about the image. Perfection wasn't natural. It was mandatory. Daily ice baths and vinegar rinses. Hollywood beauty came with rituals. Strange, painful rituals. Stars like Gloria Swanson, Joan Crawford, and Jean Harlow swore by ice baths. Not for refreshment, for discipline. Studio beauty departments promoted cold water as a way to tighten skin and preserve youth. The science was questionable. The obedience wasn't. Actresses soaked in freezing water before shoots. Some did it every morning. The shock to the system was supposed to wake up the skin, reduce puffiness, and create a flawless glow. In reality, it was just cold, miserable. But they did it anyway, because the studio said so. Then came the vinegar rinses. Hair had to shine under the lights. Studio experts claimed vinegar or lemon juice would add gloss and remove buildup. Stars rinsed their hair in acidic solutions that smelled sharp and burned if it touched their eyes. Fan magazines published these routines as Hollywood secrets. They weren't secrets. They were requirements. The message was clear. Beauty wasn't luck. It was work. Painful, uncomfortable, relentless work. Studios dressed it up as scientific glamour or wellness, but it was control. Control over how stars looked, how they felt, and how much discomfort they'd endure for the camera. Self-punishment disguised as sophistication. 24-hour availability. Contract stars didn't clock out. They were always on call. MGM's call list system kept top talent reachable day and night. Phones had to stay on. Publicists or fixers could appear at any hour. For reshoots, for publicity events, for damage control. Personal time didn't exist. This wasn't suggestion. It was in the contract. Stars signed away their privacy the moment they signed with a studio. If the phone rang at 3 a.m, they answered. If a publicist showed up at their door, they smiled and followed orders. Refuse, and the studio could suspend you without pay. Some stars kept packed bags by the door. They never knew when they'd be called to set or sent on a last-minute publicity tour. The studio owned their time, their schedules, their lives. Even vacations required approval, and approval was rarely given. This rule created an early version of today's always online culture. The difference? No text messages, just telephones and fear. Fear of missing a call, fear of angering the studio, fear of being replaced by someone more obedient. Fame wasn't a job with hours. It was a permanent shift, a life sentence dressed in satin and spotlight. The stars we worship had no off switch. They were always performing, always available, always exhausted. Fame had a dress code and a curfew. Fake dates on command. Love was scripted in old Hollywood. Publicists paired stars for magazine spreads and newsreels. These weren't real relationships. They were business arrangements. But the public believed them, and belief sold tickets. Loretta Young and Tyrone Power were staged as a couple for the cameras. So were dozens of others. The studio picked a pair, wrote the story, and sent photographers to capture spontaneous moments that were anything but spontaneous. Some fake romances lasted weeks. Others lasted years. A few turned into fake marriages. Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates married under pressure from the studio. Hudson was gay. The studio knew. But they also knew his image required a wife. So they provided one. Gates later said she didn't fully understand the arrangement. Hudson had no choice. Obey or lose everything. These stage relationships served a purpose. They made stars seem wholesome, desirable, and relatable. They distracted from real scandals. And they kept fan magazines full of content. Every date was a photo opportunity. Every kiss was publicity. Some stars fell in love with their fake partners. Most didn't. They just smiled for the camera and went home alone. Their private lives stayed private. Their public lives were fiction. Bittersweet. Showbiz illusion meeting private truth. Mandatory makeup, even off set. Joan Crawford never appeared barefaced outside her bedroom. Elizabeth Taylor kept her makeup flawless even at home. This wasn't vanity. It was a rule. Female stars under MGM and Fox were told to remain camera-ready at all times. Neighbors could talk. Press could appear. Photographers hid in bushes. One candid photo of a tired, unmade face could damage the illusion. Studios equated blemishes or tiredness with lost box office appeal. So makeup became armor. Stars wore it to the grocery store, to the doctor, even to bed sometimes, in case they had to answer the door. The message was clear. Your face is not your own. It belongs to the studio, to the public, to the camera. This rule created a strange kind of imprisonment. Stars couldn't relax. They couldn't have a lazy morning or a tired evening without risking their image. Every moment outside their private quarters was a performance. Even at home, they were on stage. Some stars embraced it. They built their identity around constant glamour. Others resented it. They felt like mannequins. Beautiful, polished, empty. The pressure to look perfect every second of every day wore them down. But they kept going, because the alternative was obscurity. Glamour as a prison. No pants for women in public. Actresses had to wear skirts or dresses offset. Always, pants were considered masculine, inappropriate, a threat to the feminine image studios worked so hard to protect. Even casual outings required full glamour. No exceptions. Katharine Hepburn famously refused. She loved pants, wore them constantly. When RKO studio executives hid her slacks to force compliance, she walked a lot in her underwear until they returned them. Her defiance became legendary. But most stars didn't rebel. They obeyed. They wore dresses in the heat, dresses in the cold, dresses that made simple tasks impossible. This rule wasn't about fashion. It was about control. Studios wanted to dictate every aspect of a star's public appearance. Pants suggested independence, strength, practicality. All things Hollywood preferred women not embody, so they banned them. The rule also reinforced traditional gender roles. Men wore pants. Women wore dresses. The division was strict, violated, and you risked being labeled difficult or unmarketable. Most stars chose compliance over conflict. Hepburn's rebellion stands out because it was rare. She had the power and the personality to push back. Most didn't. They wore what they were told, smiled when they were told, and saved their real selves for behind closed doors. Defiant humor, empowerment through defiance. Censor-approved hairstyles. The Hays Code didn't just censor dialogue in scenes. It influenced hair. Wavy, unpinned hair implied impropriety. Loose curls suggested wildness. Seduction, sin. So studio stylists tamed every strand. Hair had to look controlled. Moral, approved. Rita Hayworth's signature look came after studio stylists fixed her natural hair. Pre-fame, her look was deemed too exotic, too suggestive, so they transformed her. Lighter color, softer waves, a hairstyle that fit Hollywood's idea of acceptable beauty. The real Rita disappeared. The studio version took over. This wasn't unique to Hayworth. Many stars had their hair reshaped to fit studio standards. Natural texture was often erased. Ethnic features were softened or hidden. The goal was a specific kind of beauty, one that appealed to the widest possible audience, one that didn't challenge or provoke. Hair became another tool of control. Like makeup and wardrobe, it was part of the image, and the image was everything. Stars couldn't experiment, couldn't express themselves. Their hair had to match the character the studio created for them, even off-screen. The result was a strange uniformity. Stars started to look similar. Same waves, same shine, same careful arrangement. Individuality was sacrificed for approval. Beauty shaped by invisible moral scissors. Studio assigned shrinks and diet doctors. Studios employed dietitians, psychologists, and health experts. They prescribed meals, sleeping pills, and vitamin tonics. On paper, this looked like care. In reality, it was control. Stars had no choice in their treatment. The studio doctor decided what they ate, how they slept, what pills they took. MGM oversaw Judy Garland's calorie intake with ruthless precision. They issued pep pills to keep her energy up during long shoots. They gave her sleeping pills to bring her down afterward. She was a teenager, and they controlled every chemical that entered her body. This wasn't care. It was productivity management. Studios needed stars working, looking perfect, meeting deadlines. If that required pills, so be it. If it required starvation diets, fine. Health didn't matter. Performance did. Many stars became dependent on studio-issued medications. Some developed addictions. Others suffered long-term health problems. But the studios kept prescribing, kept monitoring, kept controlling. They justified it as helping stars maintain their image. In truth, they were maintaining their investment. The studio doctor wasn't a healer. He was an enforcer. His job was to keep stars camera ready no matter the cost. And the cost was often devastating. Kindness masked by care. No personal friends without approval. Studio PR departments discouraged stars from mingling with people who might damage reputation. Guest lists were screened. Travel plans required approval. Even dinner parties needed clearance. Contract stars at MGM and Paramount had to submit social details to publicity departments before making plans. This created artificial social circles. Stars surrounded themselves with studio-approved people, other actors, industry professionals, safe, controlled relationships. Real friendships were rare. Spontaneity was impossible. Every interaction was monitored. The studios justified this as protecting their investment. One bad friend could lead to scandal. One wrong association could destroy a career. So they controlled everything. Who stars saw, where they went, what they said in public. The result was profound isolation. Stars lived in a bubble. They couldn't trust anyone outside the studio system, and they couldn't always trust people inside it either. Everyone was watching. Everyone was reporting back. Loneliness became part of fame. Some stars accepted this. Others hated it. But most had no choice. The contract gave studios power over their social lives. Break the rules, and you'd be suspended. Or worse, dropped. Fame as loneliness. Assigned astrologers and fortune tellers. Old Hollywood mixed superstition with superstardom. Some producers consulted astrologers to pick release dates. Others used numerologists to choose stage names, and you'd be suspended. Or worse, dropped. Fame as loneliness. Assigned astrologers and fortune tellers. Old Hollywood mixed superstition with superstardom. Some producers consulted astrologers to pick release dates. Others used numerologists to choose stage names. Paramount and MGM kept luck experts on payroll. It sounds absurd, but it was real. Carol Lombard's astrologer advised her on travel dates. After Lombard died in a plane crash, astrology briefly lost favor. But not for long. The mysticism returned. Studios like having someone else to blame when things went wrong. And they liked the idea that destiny could be controlled. Some stars believed in it. Others rolled their eyes but went along. What choice did they have? If the studio said your horoscope required a name change, you change your name. If a fortune teller said a project was cursed, the project got shelved. Logic didn't matter. Control did. This rule reveals something strange about Hollywood power. The same executives who micromanaged every detail of a star's life also believed in cosmic forces. They wanted control and magic, science and superstition. Whatever worked. For stars, it was just another layer of absurdity. Another way the studio dictated their lives. Not just with contracts, but with horoscopes. Mystical, odd, lightly humorous. Forbidden from driving themselves. Insurance policies and publicity fears kept stars from driving their own cars. Chauffeurs were required, not as a perk. As a rule, studios couldn't risk injury downtime or bad press from a traffic accident, so they took the keys. Marilyn Monroe was often chauffeured by contract order. Clark Gable's insurer limited his offset driving after minor accidents. Even stars who loved driving had to give it up. The studio owned their time, their image, and their mobility. This created a strange irony. The richest, most famous people in America couldn't drive themselves to the grocery store. They had freedom to buy anything, but not freedom to move independently. They were passengers in their own lives. Some stars resented it. They felt trapped, watched, controlled. Others enjoyed the luxury. But even luxury can become a cage when it's mandatory. When you can't choose to drive yourself, even once, without risking your career. The rule also limited spontaneity. Stars couldn't take midnight drives to clear their heads, couldn't escape for a few hours alone. Every trip required a driver, and every driver was a witness, a potential reporter, another set of eyes on behalf of the studio. Richest people, least freedom. No sunburns or tans. Sunshine was forbidden in sunny California, at least for fair-skinned stars. Makeup departments warned actresses against tanning because color continuity mattered between shoots. A sunburn could delay production. A tan could ruin lighting consistency. So stars use umbrellas and parasols outdoors. Studio memos instructed Doris Day and Grace Kelly to avoid direct sunlight, not for health reasons. For visual consistency, the camera needed them to look the same from scene to scene. Any change in skin tone disrupted that illusion, so they stayed pale. Always. This rule also reinforced racialized beauty ideals. Pale skin was desirable. Tan skin suggested labor, lower class, or ethnic background. Hollywood preferred its stars porcelain white, so tanning became forbidden. Stars who naturally tanned were given makeup to lighten their skin. Others were told to avoid the beach entirely. Vacations to sunny locations required constant vigilance. Hats, gloves, long sleeves in the heat, all to protect the studio's investment. The absurdity is striking. Hollywood, located in one of the sunniest places on Earth, told its stars to avoid the sun. Glamour required sacrifice, even something as simple as enjoying a sunny day. Sunshine forbidden in sunny California. Weight checks on set. Weekly or even daily weigh-ins were enforced by wardrobe supervisors. Weight changes were noted in official logs. Actresses at MGM and Fox lived under constant surveillance, not just of their image, of their bodies. Every ounce mattered. Ava Gardner joked about sneaking meals to dodge penalties, but the joke had a dark edge. Gain weight, and you risk suspension. Lose too much, and the studio would force-feed you. Either way, your body wasn't your own. It belonged to wardrobe, to continuity, to the studio's bottom line. This rule protected wardrobe investments. Costumes were expensive and tailored precisely. A 5-pound gain meant alterations, delays, extra costs. So studios weighed stars like produce, measured them, monitored them, judged them. The psychological impact was devastating. Stars developed eating disorders, unhealthy relationships with food, constant anxiety about their bodies. But the studios didn't care. They cared about the dress fitting, about the camera angle working, about the illusion staying intact. This wasn't health monitoring. It was control. Every weigh-in reinforced who had power, and it wasn't the star. Glamour by the ounce. Smile School. MGM and Warner Brothers trained stars to smile at calculated angles, not spontaneous smiles. Rehearsed ones. Publicists taught actors which angle showed the most teeth, which tilt of the head looked most charming, which expression photographed best under flash bulbs. Clark Gable's grin was famous, but it wasn't natural. It was practiced, refined, perfected through repetition. Debbie Reynolds learned to smile on command, adjusting her expression based on photographers' needs. Every smile had a purpose, a calculation. This was brand consistency before the term existed. Studios understood that photos sold stars, and stars sold movies. So they trained actors to control their faces the way dancers control their bodies. Every expression became deliberate. Every photo opportunity became a performance. The result was eerie precision. Stars looked perfect. Always. Their smiles were identical from photo to photo. Their poses predictable. Human emotion was replaced with something mechanical, something manufactured, something safe. Real joy disappeared behind rehearsed expressions. Real sadness stayed hidden. Stars learned to show the studio what it wanted, and nothing more. Their faces became masks. Beautiful, profitable masks. Even their smiles had choreography. Behind every dazzling photo was a contract, a camera, and a list of demands. Hollywood's magic wasn't freedom. It was obedience dressed in satin. The stars who lit up the silver screen lived under rules stranger than fiction. No pockets, no sitting, no friends without approval, no sunshine, no privacy, no rest. They smiled through pain, stood when their feet ached, followed diets that starved them, took pills that controlled them, married strangers for publicity, changed their teeth, their hair, their names. They gave everything to the camera, and the camera gave them immortality. But at what cost? The rules sound absurd now. Some were darkly funny, others were cruel, a few were tragic, but they were all real, and they shaped an entire era of cinema. The glamour we still worship today was built on control, on sacrifice, on stars who had no choice but to obey. Yet somehow they made it look effortless. That was the real performance of old Hollywood. Not the roles they played on screen, but the roles they played in life. Perfect, polished, unbreakable. Even when they were breaking inside, we remember the smiles, the elegance, the magic. We should also remember the price. The stars we worship followed rules stranger than fiction, yet they made it look effortless. That was the real performance of old Hollywood. They called it glamour. It was control,